Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming over to our first panel discussion of the Expedition Cruise Network Virtual Conference. Brilliant introduction from Martin. Thank you. We're now kickstarting the program with a focus on some of the top-selling expedition cruise destinations around the world. As Martin said, there's some real big hitters that you'll automatically associate with expedition cruising, but plenty of other options as well. So what we're hoping to do in the next half hour is use some of the ECN member expertise to really get excited about some of the different places that your customers can explore via an expedition cruise, what makes those destinations so perfect for that kind of travel, and what sort of experience they can expect. So we've got 4 ECN members on the line with us to share their expertise. Please say a quick hello to Captain Dan Blanchard, who is the owner and CEO of Uncruise Adventures. Good morning, Captain Dan.
Good morning. Good to talk to you. The real early morning for me. It's 1 a.m. here in Juneau.
Oh, wow. Thank you. We appreciate that. Jacinta McAvoy, who is Vice President of Global Sales at Lindblad Expeditions. Hello to you.
Good morning, everybody.
Also an early start, I believe.
Around 5, not too bad.
Marcel Perkins, who is General Manager of Latin Trails. Great to have you with us, Marcel.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Also an early start, but happy to be here with everyone and sharing information about our beautiful destinations.
Thank you. And finally, Trixie Lange-Hitzblack, who is Expedition Leader at Hapag-Lloyd Cruises. Hi there, Trixie.
Hello and good morning from Hamburg. It's 11 o'clock in Germany, so I've had an easy start and a good breakfast to join you guys.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much for joining us, panel. And so to all of our agents who are on the call, please, if you've got any questions throughout the session, then do type those into the chat, and I'll try and make sure we ask those questions as we go. Okay, let's start with one of the biggest hitting expedition cruise destinations. That destination that really is a bit of a poster child for expedition cruising, which is Antarctica. I'll ask Trixie from Hapag-Lloyd Cruises to help me out with this one. Trixie, if that's okay. Can you share with us a little bit about how big the expedition cruise market is to Antarctica and what makes the whole thing so special?
Well, yes, I actually checked the latest figures with IATO, the International Association of Tour Operators, who's giving us statistics. And for the season 2023, they've counted more than 70,000 tourists on cruise ships coming to Antarctica, of which half comes from America, from the US, and the UK makes number 4, which is 5,389 passengers. So we have a good perspective about the potential of more passengers to send. And why is Antarctica so special? I mean, how can you put it in words? I would say it surpasses any outdoor experience that our guests can gather. And when I remember being at the gangway and passengers are disembarking after an expedition cruise to Antarctica, most people have tears in their eyes and say, this was the best trip of my life. And I think this is what Antarctica is about. It touches your heart.
Amazing. It is quite far away, isn't it? It's not an easy place to get to. Have you got a few tips for us in terms of doing that journey, how people tend to piece it together?
Well, it is quite easy to reach, actually, because speaking for Hapag-Lloyd Cruises, we get most of our passengers, if they book a package tour, which we sometimes recommend, to be on the safe side. It's an overnight flight from Frankfurt. So you check in, you have a nice glass of red wine, and then you sleep as the plane crosses the Atlantic. And with a time change, you usually arrive at 8 in the morning, and it's a nice morning, it's summertime, and then you're ready for the first city tour. We would hook up our passengers in a nice 5-star hotel, usually the Four Seasons. And then the next day, it's a charter flight down to Ushuaia. So we make sure that our passengers have a whole package. Some do a pre-cruise. They get into Buenos Aires ahead of time. Some get into Ushuaia ahead of time. That really depends on their individual timing. But again, as everything is catered for, to me, coming to Ushuaia, it's long, but it's not difficult.
Okay, sounds very comfortable.
And the same on the way back. It's a charter flight back into Buenos Aires. Those who want to stay longer can do so, and then we take them back into Frankfurt. Or those from the UK obviously can get their flight straight out of Gatwick or via Madrid, whatever their preference is. Maybe interesting to know that it's not only packages from Germany. Being a German tour operator, we are quite flexible that anyone can book their own flight package if it's from the UK or if it's from England or Scotland or wherever people come from. So we are quite flexible to cater for anyone who comes from anywhere.
Great. And in terms of the sort of itineraries and routes around Antarctica, do they vary quite a lot? Is there one kind of key route everybody does, or lots of different options?
Well, if I move my head, you can actually see Antarctica out there. And there are different itineraries, but with Hapag-Lloyd having done it now for more than 3 decades, we've chosen the big loop as the ideal. That is from Ushuaia to the subantarctic islands, touching and calling at the Falklands, and then further on to South Georgia. And anyone who hears South Georgia obviously has glittering eyes, and then down to the peninsula. So it's a good 22 days that we take our passengers. And to me, I mean, if you go to Antarctica, you don't see the subantarctic islands, you really miss half the fun and half of the excitement. And also, as passengers today get more concerned about climate and the footprints, if you do a long-haul flight, I think it's better if you have a long trip rather than going to the peninsula only, where you are out for 4 days, 5 days, and then you have only 5 days down at the peninsula. So yes, the main itinerary that we at Hapag-Lloyd Cruises offer is the big loop subantarctic islands combining with the peninsula.
Right, really make the most of it. And what can you tell us about pricing, Trixie? Obviously, it's not a cheap trip, nor should it be. Are there certain times of year, perhaps, when it's maybe slightly better value, or any other kind of insight into how pricing might change? Tend to be quite stable.
I think it's quite a challenge, I think, for travel agents to find a good deal if they are looking for a good deal, or to compare, not to compare apples and pears. Actually, we do have 2 trips on offer if somebody is now looking for a last-minute thing, and this is the Inspiration 2402 and the Inspiration 2403. Michael will be going more into detail in the training session in the afternoon, but it's 2 trips in the spring season, and it is actually 25% on double occupancy or no surcharge for single travelers. So that's a good option for solo travelers to get to Antarctica. We do have on selected trips an early booking discount, but actually this is not on most of the Antarctic trips because they are fully booked anyhow. Yeah. And then with Hapag-Lloyd, the insurance is included, the tips are included. So there's so much that you should consider when you compare prices. And in the end, I think Antarctica is not that expensive.
Yeah. It's about value, isn't it, rather than the price? Fantastic.
Yes, it is.
Time for on Antarctica, which is which is scary. That's how quickly we're having to move. Now we're going to move on to literally the polar opposite, which is the Arctic region. I'm going to ask Jacinta from Lindblad Expeditions to help us out here. Jacinta, what regions and destinations do you actually count as being the Arctic region for Expedition Cruise?
Oh my goodness, the Arctic is very, very large and very diverse, obviously. It covers about 5.5 square miles. The regions include Norway, Svalbard, east and west of Greenland, Iceland, the Canadian High Arctic, the Northwest Passage, and of course the Russian Arctic when folks could go there, but obviously we're not allowed to go there anymore. But yes, so we do a combination of probably about 16 different itineraries that include one or more of the destinations. We usually start in May, going up along the Norwegian fjords and then up into Svalbard. But we actually go there sooner as well. With because of our ships, the National Geographic Resolution and the Endurance, we can start as early as March.
Okay. So it is quite a seasonal product, is it, Arctic cruising?
I would say the typical season is probably May through September. But because of our ships and the ability to go up there earlier, with the X-Bow technology and the PC-6 ice class ships, we go up starting at the end of March. So we're up there when it is magnificent time of year to be there. A lot more ice, a little bit less wildlife, but incredible ice. Yeah.
Okay. You've got a lovely virtual background there, Jacinta. So can you tell us a little bit about why choose the Arctic? What sort of experiences and memories are clients going to be able to make there?
Well, we also do the Antarctica, and I've done both, right? So I always say I'm so glad that I went to the Antarctica first before I went to the Arctic, because it is a very different experience. Just it doesn't have the kind, unless you're on the east coast of Greenland, it doesn't have that towering ice that perhaps, the Antarctica does. But I think every part of the Arctic offers a very unique experience, and it's really about the choice of what you want to see. So if it's wildlife, you're better off going to Svalbard, or maybe the Canadian High Arctic, where you go up into Ellesmere Island. But it's really about what the client is looking for. So if they're looking for polar bears, I would say definitely Svalbard and the Canadian Arctic, especially going up into, as I said, further north as well. Um, so yeah, it's really about. But I mean, we have incredible wildlife up there. We have the Arctic fox, the narwhals. If you go up to Ellesmere Island, there's a possibility of seeing those. And then, of course, lots of the reindeer, Arctic fox, sea lions, and just incredible wildlife. But then, of course, along the coast of Greenland, the southern coast of Greenland, you can experience some amazing cultural experience as well with some of the Inuit folks that have been there for hundreds of years, and they really showcase how they live there, and it's really important to them to be able to show it off and to really engage with travelers in those regions.
Wonderful. And how many different itineraries do you actually have at Lindblad Expeditions then?
So we offer 16 different itineraries, and they range in size from starting with 6 nights in Greenland. So we call it our Escapes program, 6 nights in Greenland, 6 nights in Iceland. And then it goes all the way up to 23 days. That is combining Iceland, for example, with southern Greenland, and then up into the Canadian Arctic. So yeah, so you can go for, the 6 days, which will give you a partial experience. But I would say our most popular is the 10-day experience to Svalbard, or the 12-day experience that takes you up through the Norwegian fjords. Those two are just, obviously demand is very, very high for that part of the Arctic.
Right. Again, encourage clients to really make the most of it and do those longer trips if they possibly can. Thank you so much, Jacinta. Now let's move to somewhere infinitely warmer, the Galapagos. Marcel from Latin Trails is going to help us with this one. We've seen photos, we've seen videos, Marcel, but just summarize for us, if you could, what it is that makes the Galapagos so special.
Well, the Galapagos, for starters, the beauty of it is actually we're at the equator, so we're at the center of everything. We're not that difficult to get to. As many destinations, we are only 4 hours from Miami to get to Ecuador. It's an overnight flight or a little bit of a long haul flight from Madrid for our travelers that are coming from the UK. They would connect there. But also, the Galapagos are very special because of the way you can come up close to the wildlife. You're encountering giant tortoises, marine iguanas, wildlife that's found nowhere else on Earth, but without having to face extreme weather, but enjoying these unique experiences. It's a very active trip. You're not only encountering the wildlife and walking alongside it on the trails, but you also have another part of it, which is the underwater world. You're snorkeling with sea lions, sea turtles, even with penguins that are in this magnificent landscape. Every island different from the other. So when you're cruising around the Galapagos Islands, you're actually cruising. Um, in the morning, you could be at one side of one island, just like Bartolome, which is behind me. You cross the bay in the afternoon, and you're on a lava field on Santiago Island. Two different environs right there on the same day. And the wildlife from one island to another is a bit different, I mean, everybody's going to be able to see the giant tortoises, the sea lions, which are everyone's favorite, blue-footed boobies, the flightless cormorant, penguins. But on different islands, there's a different type of species. So it's a unique trip. It also shares the the encounters that Charles Darwin had, and where he developed his theory of natural selection, which is the historic side of it. So you have history, you have an active trip that is you're off the yachts. These are because our trips are on small yachts that cater to only 16 guests at a time. So it's a very intimate expedition. You're off the yacht. Not just 4 or 5 hours. You're off the yacht 6 or 7 hours per day, both swimming, hiking, and enjoying zodiac rides. So it's really unique experience, very close to nature.
And you mentioned there's lots of different islands with different things on different islands. So how many different sorts of itineraries do you offer, and how can agents choose the right option for their client?
Well, there's 9 different itineraries that can be offered. And depending and they vary from yacht to yacht. We have 2 main yachts we operate: the Galapagos Seaman Journey, which is a first class catamaran, and the Galapagos Petrel, which is a luxury catamaran. The itineraries range anywhere from 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, and 14 nights. All the way up to 14 nights is the possibility of you can do a 14-night cruise without repeating any of the islands or visitor sites. And each is going to be distinctive from the other. The most popular ones in the UK market are the 7-night cruises, because you do have a good combination of wildlife and activities throughout that. A typical itinerary or a typical day on a cruise in the Galapagos would be, an early wake up call. We wake up at 6 a.m. Usually. We have a very early breakfast. At 8 a.m., we're on the islands. We have a nice 2-hour hike on one of the trails. To give you an idea, on Genovesa Island, we would disembark at, let's say, at El Barranco. This is one of the cliffs areas. You start the trail by climbing Prince Philip steps. That's how we call them, and you encounter the nesting site of the red-footed boobies. And these are, and depending on the time of the year, they could be practicing their courtship, rubbing beaks, building nests, or there could be hatchlings there. So, and during different times of the year, because it's a year-round destination. That's another thing about the Galapagos. You can visit 365 days a year with great weather all the time. And as I said, depending on the time of year, each species has a different activity. As I said, nesting, or you could see the hatchlings. Then as you follow the trail, you'll encounter the Galapagos hawk, which is in the crevices. And as you reach the end of the trail at the cliff, you see thousands of seabirds fluttering around, hawks and owls waiting. And so it's just a unique location. The island has its lava fields, it has its brush and different scenery. Then we're back. We avoid the midday sun on these cruises because we're at the equator, so we have lunch on board. We relax. You have your cabins there, and then after snorkeling, we have lunch, and in the afternoon we just cross to the other side of the island, and we're at Darwin Bay, and we're landing on a nice soft sand beach. We have snorkeling. We have the possibility of practicing some sea kayaking, and then we're hiking amongst the mangrove forest, seeing some more red-footed boobies, but yellow warblers, tidal birds in the tidal pools. You have all types of you have the playful sea lions always. So it's a unique day, and every day is different. So taking into account that, if you have a 3-night itinerary, you would have your arrival into the islands. You board your yacht. The first excursion is in the afternoon, 2 full days of exploring, and on the last day, you have a morning excursion. You fly back to mainland Ecuador. You have to arrive into Ecuador first, and that's the beauty of that, is you have the possibility of expanding your trip, not just doing the Galapagos. We could do an expedition cruise in the Amazon as well, or explore the Andes of Ecuador, or combine the Galapagos with another unique destination like Machu Picchu, which is close by as well, and we can organize all of that.
Thanks so much, Marcel. Sounds like the options to combine are just absolutely infinite with Galapagos. It's really exciting. Thank you. Sorry to move on a little swiftly. Now we're going to take a look at Alaska and also possibly Baja California and Mexico as well. For this, we're going to talk to Uncruise's Captain Dan Blanchard. Tell us a little bit, if you can, Captain Dan, about why Alaska works so well for expedition crews.
Well, I think, Alaska is a very large place. And what works so well in Alaska is that there are many groups of islands. So one of our operations takes place, or several actually, in Southeast Alaska. We have operations in Prince William Sound and in the Aleutian Islands. So the fact that there are so many islands and that it's so preserved. I mean, you talk about national parks and preserved lands. 17 million acres in the Tongass National Forest, which is under the roadless rule. There are no roads to speak of. It's true wild country that has just actually been kind of counterintuitive to the rest of the world. Oftentimes, we have more whales today than we did 30 years ago. We have more bears. We have the highest, 17 miles from me right now, the highest population of brown bears per mile on Admiralty Island in the entire world, 17 miles from where I'm at right now. And I think the other thing that is also wonderful, of course, this time of year, Northern Lights, it's real common that at this hour, it's 1 a.m. in Alaska right now, that you would hear on the microphone, you would hear, "Adventurers, welcome to the Northern Lights. Come up on deck." And the exciting thing is, not only, and that generally happens right when we're entering Glacier Bay and we're facing north on a beautiful evening, and it's not just the guests that show up. The crew all get out of their bunks because there is an electricity about Northern Lights that never is old. And so I think we even had a report from one of our boats last night that was pulling into Glacier Bay. They had Northern Lights. The Northern Lights were so strong that it lit up the water enough to where they found out there were about 30 humpbacks at the entrance to Glacier Bay as they entered. And of course, Uncruise has more permits for Glacier Bay than anyone afloat. And so important to know that we're the big game as far as Glacier Bay National Park goes in Alaska.
Wow, it sounds like an amazing destination. Can you tell us a little bit more about kind of getting there and the sort of nuts and bolts for agents of putting it together?
Yeah, there are a couple routes, and oftentimes folks go, for instance, from the UK or from Europe. They'll travel either to Anchorage, Alaska, which is our big city, a whopping 500,000 people. Our big city. There's only 750 in the whole area, but so you can go to Anchorage, you can go to Vancouver or Seattle. Vancouver has the complication that you have to go from Vancouver to Seattle up to Alaska for the most part. So I would suggest, people fly in via either Anchorage or Seattle, and those are the easiest routes. And then it's a very short flight, 2 hours from where I'm at in Juneau to Seattle, and that gets you right into the heart of Alaska, or a little longer if you go up to Anchorage or go out and visit us in the Aleutian Islands.
And is there a best time of year to visit? Is there a season, or does it work all year round for Alaska?
Well, it really depends what you're looking for. For instance, if you are into Northern Lights, come up on our April and early May trips or our mid-August and September trips, because that's when the Northern Lights are going to, the rest of the time, we have too much sunlight in the main part of summer, right? If you're really interested in just whales, for instance, you might want to come in July or August. And of course, the bears are pretty prolific when the salmon start running and in the early spring when they're on the beaches. So anywhere from April to September has great opportunities. But I would suggest, really doing the research, talking to some of my sales folks or myself about, really it's what you're looking for as a traveler. If brown bears are on your list, we can get you on the right boat, the right place.
Yeah. Asking the experts. Lydia says the train journey from Vancouver to Seattle is great. She must have done that one.
Yeah, it is. It's a wonderful trip. Good idea.
One of our guests wants to ask you, Captain Dan, which UK tour operators you work with. Would it be possible for an agent to book your product through a tour operator, or do they need to come to you direct?
They can come to us direct, and we'll back up to the tour operator
Right.
and credit them. So it works both ways.
So we'll find out that information for you. Our James Pettit, we'll find out if there are UK operators that you recognise that you can book that product through. Wonderful. Okay, we only have a few minutes left, and we were quite conscious that we've talked about 4 very specific places, but of course there's many more awesome places that you can do expedition cruising. So just in our final few minutes, I wanted to ask each of our guests to tell us, just to mention one other place that hasn't come up in conversation yet that they think is really special and perhaps might be a little bit lesser known, undiscovered, less on the radar, to inspire us a little bit about some of the options here. Trixie, would there be something that springs to mind from Hapag-Lloyd Cruises' portfolio that's perhaps a little bit different?
Definitely. When you say off the beaten track, real expedition where hardly anyone goes and where we are far away from what we call Western civilization, I would definitely suggest the remote islands of Papua New Guinea, Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, and Palau. And I tried to figure, it's up on the northeast of Australia, Micronesia and Melanesia. When I did my first trip around the South Pacific, we started off West Chile, and then we did French Polynesia with all the stereotypes, and we came into Fiji with all the stereotypes, but then we moved up north, and then we entered an area with ceremonies, dances, customs, sometimes friendly, sometimes warlike. And I will never forget coming ashore first with a little gift for the chief of this tribe, little village, and we had an exchange, and the kids of the village danced with the adults all dressed up like warlords, and it touched us. And then we went to the next island where bungee jumping was invented, and the colors, the lush forest, it is so different to the polar regions. And we don't go where the big ships go, we actually go where hardly anyone goes. And I think passengers feel very safe when they come from Europe to do it with a European, put it a German tour operator, because it's so far away, you feel much safer if you know there is a big company behind it. And yes, that trip, actually we have 2 in 25 in the spring. One goes from New Caledonia all the way up to Palau and then the same way back. So if somebody can't get enough of it, he could do both ways and then really visit all those places far away from what we call civilization. It's a different world. It's warm, lush, beautiful, and really exciting.
Thanks so much, Trixie. I must ask Jonathan Fletcher's question. Sorry, Jonathan, you did ask this at the beginning. He's interested to find out about expedition cruise for passengers with accessibility requirements. Do any of you have any insight there in terms of, what passengers perhaps who are wheelchair users? Are there certain cruise lines or cruise ships or destinations which work better for that?
I'll take out on that. We do have there's several yachts in the Galapagos that we can offer wheelchair accessibility, of course with some assistance from the crew. And the life can take place on, what I mean, just living on board can take place on one deck and going throughout that deck and enjoying also the views. The Zodiac rides are always accessible because they will be able to see a lot of the wildlife off the cliffs. There is the possibility of snorkeling. And we actually have the possibility of boarding floating wheelchairs that are, for the water experience. And that in that sense, it is a partial accessibility.
Okay, great. We'll connect you with Jonathan maybe so that you can talk some more about that. That's great. Thank you, Marcel.
Absolutely.
We've already gone over by 1 minute. So Jacinta, just one sentence. Which other destination would you really like to put onto our agent's radar today?
Well, we have 16 ships in all, so we cover all 7 continents around the world. But one of my favorites is Baja California. So to see the large great whales during the January, February, March timeframe when they migrate down to have their babies. So that is one of my favorite. And Costa Rica and Panama, Galapagos. I mean, we have so many destinations. Visit our website at expeditions.com.
Fabulous. Captain Dan, final word from you on somewhere maybe that agents haven't thought about yet?
Yes, we're the only operator in Hawaii with small expedition ships. And I want to tell you right now, if you've ever thought you have a client that's interested in going to Hawaii, this is the year. Why? There was a big fire that wiped out the town of Lahaina, and that has put a lot of stress on those people having jobs, and they all work in tourism. So, this is kind of a heartfelt thing as a traveler. We want to enrich the places we go. That's why many of us are in this business. That's why I'm in this business. And to be able to go to Hawaii this year, right now, when the need is great, and see Hawaii on an expedition vessel like you'll never see Hawaii before. If you've been there, you haven't been there by water on an expedition boat. And I just encourage people to think about Hawaii this winter.
Brilliant. Oh, we have overrun by a couple of minutes. I'm very sorry for taking a little extra time there. Thank you so much to Captain Dan of Uncruise Adventures, Jacinta from Lindblad Expeditions, Marcel from Latin Trails, and Trixie from Hapag-Lloyd Cruises. Of course, lots of other ECN members do cruise to these destinations, and others, BBC style, other cruise lines are available. So we hope you'll be able to meet lots of other ECN members over the next couple of days and learn even more about these awesome places. Thank you so much, panelists. We're going to move our agent guests into the first training session now, and we'll make that little bit of time up in the break as well. Thanks so much for staying with us, guys, and thank you so much, panel. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.